Okay, you may notice a slightly different background behind me. This is my office. I went to get a snack between the American Revolution and the French Revolution, and power went out at my house. Joys of country living. So that's why this is different. If you come and see me during student hours, you will see even more into my office. But let's switch gears to the French Revolution now, and let's really think about what are the goals of the revolutionaries in France? What do they want to change? How do those goals change over time? How are they connected to the Enlightenment and Enlightenment notions? The motto of the French Revolution, we talked a little bit about mottos before, is liberty, freedom, equality, pretty straightforward, fraternity, brotherhood, liberty, equality, fraternity. How does that connect to the Enlightenment? And do they really actually get there? Well, to understand what's going on, we've got to set the scene, right? And I've got this weird image here on the right. And what this is a representation of the social status of different individuals in France. France had what was called three estates. You can think of those estates as classes. The first estate was members of the church, the clergy. The second estate was the nobility, the king, and people who have wealthy lands and have the right last names. And the vast majority of the population, probably like 95 to 98% of the population, was known as the Third Estate. We'll talk a little bit more about who they are and what they are in an upcoming slide. But one thing you might notice here is that the First Estate, dude in that hat and kind of dressy looking thing, but it's actually a robe, he's a priest. The nobility, the member of the Second Estate who's dressed up like a soldier, what they are doing is standing on a rock that is crushing the Third Estate. And that's meant to be a metaphor for the First and Second Estates crushing the Third Estate with debt and tax burdens and inability to really do anything good for themselves. Why are they doing that? Well, here's where we've got to set the scene. France in the 1780s, actually, when we talked about the Enlightenment, France was the leading country in Europe, right? Largest population, wealthiest. A lot of that changes over the course of the 1700s. And in the 1780s, France is in huge amount of national debt. One of the reasons that they are is because they had supported the Americans in the American Revolution, which makes sense because they want to weaken Britain, which is always an enemy of France. So in supporting the Americans and in paying a bunch of money to help them out in the Revolutionary War and helping them be successful, France goes into a huge amount of debt. It is so big that every single year in the 1780s, they are paying half of their annual income on their interest on the debt. That's like if you get a credit card, half of your paycheck isn't going to paying down the balance, it's just going to the interest that is charged on that. So if that's the case, you've got to handle it in a couple of different ways, and they don't do it so great. One way is kind of those payday loans that you might see advertised all over the place. Short-term, high-interest loans, they get those from Swiss banks. The other way they do this is to try and collect money up front and give people the ability to collect taxes themselves. This is called tax farming, so basically they say to somebody, hey, if you give me all the money that we're going to collect in taxes from this area, you can collect the taxes yourself, and if you want to jack them up a little bit, tell people they owe more than they do, that's fine. Obviously, that's not going to be that great, and people are going to be pretty resentful from that. So taxes suck, tax collectors are even worse. Overall, the system is miserable, especially for the poor, but these policies also threaten the middle and the upper class. So, in other words, France is pretty unstable in the 1780s.